This is Morning Express, and it's time for us to focus on state of the nation. And I'll introduce the panel very, very shortly. But just to remind you all, to figure out what we're going to be talking about today, it's the judiciary. And of course, there's been a lot of controversy surrounding it. The question we had asked earlier on is, do you have confidence in the judiciary? And I'll start by, first of all, sampling some of your answers that have come through. I have Karanja Wawangari, who says, that will depend on the political affiliation. Myself, I no longer trust them, which of course would be a very sad state of affairs. We have Reverend Harrison Kinyanjui, who says, yes, I still have faith, though there is a lot of cleaning up to be done. Watch the lessons in Nandi County. I have Dennis Nderitu, who says, no confidence at all. They are full of corruption. Keep them coming. I'll sample them as we go along. But the judiciary has had quite a lot of controversy, not just the recent wake of allegations to Judge Tunoi. And just to remind us or refresh us on some of the controversies that have hit the judiciary, here is some of what has been going on.
9 commissioners voted in favor of asking the Chief Registrar of Judiciary to take compulsory leave during the 15 days when the investigations will be in process. 4 commissioners voted against this decision.
There is no financial impropriety or irregularities in the procurement processes of the judiciary. I can tell Kenyans that, in fact, since I took office, we have never had an appeal against any of our procurement decisions.
We have 28 magistrates found suitable and 8 found unsuitable.
The JSC has today, at a special meeting, formally received a complaint by Geoffrey Kiplagat alleging that Honorable Justice Philip Tunoi received over 200 million shillings as an inducement from the Nairobi Governor Evans Kidero to rule in his favor in an election petition filed by the Kabete Member of Parliament Ferdinand Waititu in 2014. The JSC, under my chairmanship, has today set up a special committee of the JSC to consider the allegations.
So those are just some of the controversies that have hit an arm of government, the judiciary. And let me now introduce the panel we have this morning. And to my immediate left, we have Harrison Kinyanjui, who is a lawyer. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Pleasure.
Okay, next to him we have Edwin Sifuna, an advocate.
Thank you,
sir, for joining us as well. Last but not least, we have Martin Oloo, who is a political analyst. Thank you for joining us. And I'll start with Edwin Sifuna. In the wake and in the light of what we have seen, this let's start with what is happening right now with the allegations raised against a very senior member of the judiciary, Justice Tunoi. Your comments on that?
Well, they say that justice must not only be done, it must be seen to be done.
Absolutely.
And the greatest victim or the greatest damage that is going to come out of these allegations, whether they are proven true or not, is the diminishing public confidence in the judicial system. We are at a time when public confidence in the judiciary is at its lowest. One of your earlier comments, the feedback that you just read out from one of your viewers, was that according to his political affiliation,
yes,
that he no longer trusts the judiciary, and that largely has to do with, I believe, the ruling that was given by the Supreme Court in the election petition regarding the presidential election. And I have postulated that at that particular moment, the Supreme Court at least lost half or 50% of his country with the decision that they made, because many of those who support the opposition were not very pleased or about the decision. And the reason that they were not pleased is not because of the reasoning that the judges, or because of the decision went against them, but because it was not a satisfactory explanation that came out from the Supreme Court. And even up to today, we have law schools and scholars still debating whether that decision by the Supreme Court was founded on any sound legal principles. And from then on, we have had several incidences, as you have just shown your viewers, that have slowly been eroding the confidence of the judiciary, so that the latest claims against a judge of the apex court only go to further diminish that particular belief in the public that we have a judiciary that can be trusted.
Okay, let me come to you, Harrison Kinyanjui. Is it fair for us to, because when you look at some of the allegations that are against the judiciary, it is individuals, but of course individuals within the judiciary, an arm of the government, which is expected to be like Caesar's wife with no reproach. And like Edwin Sifuna says, it's not just justice to be done, but to be seen to be done. So is it fair for us to, for those who do not have confidence in the judiciary, to do that based on those allegations, yet they're individuals?
First of all, I must say that there are honorable, respectable, very sincere judges and magistrates who are serving. But at the same time, there are rotten apples, real bad criminals who are in those corridors of justice. And the tragedy of it is that they are actually ruining the reputation and the esteem of these honest, sincere, hard-working, diligent, committed, and very faithful judges and very faithful magistrates. And having said that, the judiciary does not have this PR agency that comes out and says that, you know, we are the judiciary, this is an individual, and therefore he should not, she should not be projected to be the image of the judiciary. Unfortunately, the perception that Kenyans have flow from what we see. And now what we are seeing is a corrupt judge, allegedly. And now we are reading that he received $200 million, shillings in dollars. And someone comes out and pinpoints to him, and the question is, why him? Why not some other judge? And when you now begin to interrogate that, you have then to have that with a pinch of salt. And then what Mr. Sifuna has said, my learned friend, is the totality of what has cumulatively come up to now, to this stage, from the Supreme Court decision of the presidential election has been very disturbing, very unhappy. Not a single election has been nullified by the Supreme Court, having been nullified by the Court of Appeal. And the Court of Appeal sat, examined the evidence, and then the Supreme Court comes along with some very questionable analysis of that evidence. And therefore, we can say that the judiciary as a whole, the way it's projecting itself, is that it's out of sync completely with the concept of justice in this country. Not a single convict has been convicted in the corruption court of high prominence. They are taken to court. We have all these hullabaloo. Oh, so-and-so was caught up with corruption allegations. High public office. But what happens? They go through the judicial process. And then we hear they either were acquitted, it's silent on it, there was insufficient evidence, and all of that. But the judiciary should come forth and say that we have a problem that we have to deal with. We are the arm of government that is supposed to be dealing with the expedition of the law. Those cases drag on. There is no judicial policy that we can speak of today that we know of. He knows of my learned friend Mr. Oloo knows of, that if you file or if you have a case touching on corruption, it should be expedited and dealt with within this period of time. It can drag on for years. And as you know, the Kenyan memory is that. So what do Kenyans then conclude as a consequence of that? The judiciary is simply not with us in this fight. And they give up easily.
Okay. All right. Let me come to you, Martin Oloo. And we are in a year as we get closer and closer to the elections. It is a time that is critical that Kenyans have confidence, especially in the judiciary, because at the time where there is contention, at the time there is disagreement, this is the very office that we expect to be the neutral arbitrator. How are we doing in terms of confidence in the judiciary as a country, and what effect is that likely to have even as we approach 2017?
No, thanks for that, Mike. And because you're asking me to link the politics of it, I think that what is key here is that there are certain institutions that are supposed to play an umpire's role, they're supposed to mediate, and they're supposed to ensure that there's fairness. Now, I want to link both IEBC and then the judiciary, because then you're bringing into the politics of it.
Right.
People want to see an IEBC that rises to the occasion, that is transparent, accountable, and that is likely to run a free and fair election. And where that confidence is not, people want to turn to the judiciary and say, fine, should these guys get it wrong, we at least have a recourse to the judiciary, and therefore the judiciary will give us the last word on this. Now, my colleagues have said that unfortunately, when it comes to the jurisprudence that we are seeing coming out of the judiciary, in respect to elections, for example, it's one thing. It's one thing that now we don't know which is which. I mean, right from the High Court level, then the Court of Appeal, and then the Supreme Court. What is it telling us? It's telling us that if I was a presidential candidate at this stage, and there was a danger or a chance that we will go to court, I may not have my day. Now, if I realize that I may not have my day in court, what are my options? And this is now where the rule of law becomes challenged, because if you cannot have confidence in the court, in the judiciary, then your alternatives are anything but against the rule of law. And that's not what you want to encourage in this country. So, obviously, we have a problem, and my colleagues have ventilated on this, so I don't need to even repeat much of it. The problem is that judiciary is not immune to the goings on in this country. The problem is that men and women called lawyers, who then find themselves either in the legal profession or, legal practice, or find themselves either on the bench or wherever it is, are Kenyans and are going through the various challenges that Kenyans are going through. So even as we have no confidence in the judiciary, or as our confidence in the judiciary tends to be low, there is the time for us to question our own basis, morality, our own ways of doing business. Because you could say the same of the judiciary as you would say of the legislature, and that reminds me of the tweets that were exchanging between the Chief Justice and Edwin Sifuna. And one was saying that the pot was darker than the other. And basically what we are saying, that you could say the same of the executive. Indeed, over the last couple of days or months, we've been seeing lots of cases coming out of corruption issues in the cabinet and so on. So you've seen that. So that leaves us with a question. As Kenyans, do we really frown upon this issue of corruption? Is there a place where you can say corruption is actually totally free? In fact, every time I see a sign that says this is a corruption-free zone, I begin to look for instances of corruption. Because by that declaration alone, there's something you're not saying. So we must look for that evidence. I want to submit that, yes, the judiciary, particularly at the Supreme Court level, has been hit below. Has been so hit below the belt to the extent that the doubts that are being planted in Kenyans are going to take longer to actually rest. Because if you were looking for seriousness, you're looking for supremacy of jurisprudence, supremacy of decision making, it's the Supreme Court you look to. If you are looking at, say, the inner sanctum of judicial decision making, it's the Supreme Court, because that's where the fineness is supposed to be. Now, my colleagues have submitted, and I fully subscribe to it, that we haven't seen that jurisprudence. Most of the times we've seen rulings coming from the Supreme Court, from purely a jurisprudence perspective, they have been below. And now you accuse it of you accuse them of corruption, you just lower that.